Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good morning and namaste, everybody. So this is our Ask Swami session, where we have these large numbers of questions which come into us from all over the world, over the internet, and we select some of them and discuss them. As always, Diane has got a selection of questions to put, and in between those questions we'll also take questions from the live audience. I'll ask you to raise your hands, have your questions ready, but you'll have to come to the front if I call upon you, and then you ask the question. Keep it short, to the point. And again, as I've said earlier also, don't wait for your question, whether you're in an internet audience or here. Don't wait for your question to be answered. When is he going to come to my question? Many of these questions are relevant to all of us. So sometimes the answer to one question might make sense to somebody else who is sitting and listening. So it's good to listen attentively to the questions and the answers. In the Panchadashi, which is a classic text of Advaita Vedanta, there is what is the practice of non-duality? Non-duality has no practice as such. It's basically an inquiry. But what is the practice of non-duality, practice of Advaita? It says, Tat kathanam tat chintanam parasparam tat prabodhanam etad brahma paratvam hi brahmabhyasam vidur buddha. This is Sanskrit for speaking about that, discussing that, enlightening each other about that. This one-pointed commitment to Brahman, to the spiritual quest. This is called the practice of Brahman, the practice of non-duality. So that's what we're going to do now. So, Diane, what do you have for us this morning?
Good morning, Swamiji. Is this on?
Is this on? Can you hear? Yeah.
The first question is from Samir. In your YouTube talk on it, from bit, from chit, you made a brief mention of Vedanta and Samkhya as being able to explain consciousness as the causal base, though only Vedanta was described. Therefore, I have the following question. Traditional Samkhya seems to separate consciousness and non-conscious elements absolutely. Assuming Purusha is consciousness, which illumines all understanding activities of the buddhi, couldn't the three states of consciousness, Jagrata, Svapna, and Sushupti, be terms better applied to the states of mentation, while Turiya simply becomes the power illuminating the mirror of buddhi?
Okay, that's a lot going on there. I've noticed one thing, I don't know if you have seen, if you've been following this series over the years, the questions have become more and more difficult. Because they've become more precise and more sophisticated, more refined, which is good. So what's this question about? Samir is asking, he's talking about something I said in a talk unforgettably titled, It from Bit from Chit. So the title It from Bit, I was inspired by Jim Holt's book, Why Does the World Exist? In that there's a chapter, It from Bit. It means universe, material. So is it possible that our material existence has come from information? I mean, basically, the ultimate reality is not one more particle, but it's information. So that radical idea. And then David Chalmers, in our conversation, online conversation, he said, it from bit from chit. That sounds like a good title for a talk, And I said, yeah, I'll do that then. So the next talk was titled It from Bit from Chit. So, now what the basic idea of the talk was, this physical material universe is based on a more subtle mental universe, and that is based on consciousness, chit. Now what Samir is asking is, in Sankhya philosophy, they make a clean distinction between consciousness and matter. In Sanskrit, Prakriti and Purusha. See, it's very logically sound and psychologically sound also, the Sankhya philosophy. It is attributed to the great sage Kapila, whom Swami Vivekananda called the first philosopher of the human race. What it says is, it's pretty easy to understand because it follows the structure of our experience. All our experience is basically subject-object. You are experiencing something. I am experiencing something. I am the subject and everything else is the object for me. And what Sankhya says, this is right. This is the truth. You, the subject, you are consciousness. And what makes something a subject? Awareness, consciousness, the ability to experience. So you, the subject, you are actually consciousness. And the object, whatever is the object, whatever you can experience, the stars and planets out there, the streets and buildings and people, and our own bodies, and even our own minds. We can experience our minds. Look inside and you will find thoughts, emotions, ideas, memories, desires. All of that is object. So you are pure subject to pure consciousness and everything else is object, and everything in the object domain, from the physical universe to the subtle mental universe, all of it is called Prakriti or nature. So nature provides us with the object and we are pure consciousness. So there are two realities, consciousness and object or material reality. And here material reality includes even thoughts, ideas, because they are all experienced. All right. So far it isn't difficult to understand. Not only not difficult to understand, it seems to follow our experience. That's how we experience the universe. And that's where Sankhya stops. Sankhya philosophy, it tells us that our problem is we have mixed up the subject and the object. What belongs to the object we have appropriated to the subject. The body is object, but I have taken it as I. And therefore body is getting old, I am getting old. Body is getting sick, I am getting sick. I don't have any doubt about it. It seems like a living fact to me. But Sankhya says, it's not. It's a terrible, terrible mistake. One sadhu in the Himalayas, he put it so simply in Hindi, I'll tell you and translate. He said, how to practice Vedanta. जो जहाँ की चीज़ है उसको वहीं रहने दो महात्मा जी. Keep whatever, what belongs where, just keep them there. What does that mean? Sickness. Yes, it belongs to the body, to the prana, not to you. Keep it there. We have never thought of it that way. I am sick. I am obviously suffering. But notice, sickness, suffering. If you carefully note, where is that suffering? It's in the body, and you are aware of it. Therefore, you are awareness. The body and its sickness are objects. It's a bit of a weird way of looking at it. It works. It works. Even if before you are fully enlightened in the Sankhya sense, until you realize yourself as pure consciousness, even before that, if you think of sickness, pain, mental distress, unhappiness, negativities, all of them as objects, just like this cloth you are seeing, just like that, an object. A psychological gap opens up between you and what you experience. It gives a lot of relief. In fact, all therapists, especially these days cognitive behavior therapists, they try to do this. They try to drive a wedge between you and your problems. You are not defined by your problems. Once this gap is there, you can deal with those problems. When a doctor treats your illness, your sickness, for that doctor, your sickness, so-called your sickness, is an object. And Sankhya says, so it should be for you also. All right. So this is how Sankhya deals with it. Separation of Prakriti and Purusha. And not only just in understanding, they have an allied system called yoga, Patanjali yoga. And if you practice that, it becomes a living fact. You can separate yourself from, and you still remain. It's not that you somehow pop out of your body. You're there, but a clearly existing difference becomes clear to us. It was not clear earlier. It was covered over. But this is not Advaita. This is Sankhya. A lady wrote to me saying that my little daughter's name is Sankhya. And she watches, I guess her mom makes her watch, she watches all your talks. And she is delighted when you say Sankhya. That's the only part she's delighted with. All right. So this is Sankhya. Now the question is that notice, in Sankhya, consciousness and matter are distinct but not entirely apart, because consciousness depends on nature for experiences, and nature depends on consciousness for being experienced. So what does nature give to consciousness? Nature gives to consciousness two things. It's called bhoga apavarga, experience and freedom. So experience is all our life, pleasure and pain as we evolve through lifetimes. All of that is provided by Prakriti or nature. And finally freedom, enlightenment and freedom from birth and death, from suffering. So that's what Prakriti provides for consciousness. What does consciousness provide for Prakriti? Life and experience and knowability. All of that comes from consciousness. So this is like they depend on each other. That's the Sankhya system. Now he's asking that, so in Vedanta we have this term Turiya, the witness of the waking, dreaming, deep sleep. So waking, dreaming, deep sleep, if his words are that, can't we regard them as mentation? That's what he says? Yes. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Mentation means, aren't they functions of the mind? Yes, you're right, Samir. In Vedanta, in Sankhya, in Vedanta, they are functions of the mind. Waking, mind is awake. What falls asleep? Mind falls asleep. What dreams? The mind dreams. Consciousness illumines all of this. So isn't this is the Turiya of Vedanta? No, there is a difference. In Sankhya, consciousness is the witness of waking, dreaming, deep sleep. And so also in Vedanta, however, Vedanta has this huge difference. All of what Sankhya says is acceptable to Vedanta. You are pure consciousness, you are witness. And then Vedanta does two more things, big steps forward. Sankhya insists that we are all separate consciousnesses. Vedanta says there cannot be any separation in consciousness, so we are one consciousness. And there are arguments to prove this. So we are all one consciousness. Then next Vedanta says, the objects that we experience are also ultimately not separate from consciousness. Sankhya insists there are two different realities. They seem to be. I and the object, they seem to be. But Vedanta says, take a closer look. Where is this object? If you say, is it outside your body? Yes, certainly. I am here, the table is outside my body, clearly. But as awareness, the body is in awareness, the table is also in awareness. A good way of understanding this is our dreams. In our dreams, the subject and the object are both in the dreaming mind. See, when you are walking around and meeting people and seeing the sky and the earth in your dreams, when you wake up, what do you say? All that sky, earth, trees, people, all of that was dreamt in the mind. Not only that, I was part of the dream. I was walking around and seeing things. And that me who was in the dream, the real me is lying here on the bed and sleeping. That me who was in the dream was also part of the dreaming mind. The dreaming mind in itself became subject and object. And Vedanta claims that is true in the waking state also. It's not the mind. Consciousness appears as subject and object. Vivekananda put it in his poem in this language, one only exists. It appears as nature, soul. Sankhya will say two exist. Nature and soul, and there are many souls. Souls means Purusha or consciousness. There are many, many souls, and nature is there. So two realities, two kinds of reality. In Advaita Vedanta, one. Because nature, object, whatever is appearing to you is finally reduced back into an appearance in consciousness and not apart from consciousness. It's not a solid, separate, independent reality apart from you, the consciousness. And Advaita claims this is actually according to our experience. It's impossible to have something outside consciousness. You'll say, why not? But if you have that something outside consciousness, other than consciousness, it can never be experienced. If it cannot be experienced, why do you talk about it at all? Yeah. So Advaita Vedanta reduces the object back to the subject, and therefore consciousness becomes non-dual. Subject is consciousness. Non-dual means no second reality apart from consciousness, no second reality apart from you. Now this question of Turiya, being only the witness of the waking, dreaming, deep sleep, illumining the waking, dreaming, deep sleep, not just illumining, not just being witness. This Turiya is the waker and the waker's world. Sankhya will never say that. Sankhya will say you are the experiencer and the world is provided by Prakriti for you. But here, Vedanta says you are both you, the experiencer, and the world that you are seeing. Just like a dream. You admit it in your dream. When we wake up, what do we say? The whole world which I saw in the dream was in my mind, the dreaming mind. And I who saw that world in the dream, I was also in this mind. The mind in itself became seer and seen. Subject and object. So Turiya is waker and the waking world. Dreamer and the dream world. Deep sleeper and the potential, the seed state of deep sleep. It is both subject and object. It is non-dual. Sankhya consciousness is not non-dual. This is the difference. We take one more.
This question is from Muhammad Ibrahim PK. Is enlightenment a spontaneous process, just like awakening from sleep to the existing world? What is the difference between a normal person and an enlightened person when experiencing the world? Can an enlightened person see the past, present, and the future?
All right, 3 different questions actually. First, an interesting question. Is enlightenment is it a spontaneous process like waking up from sleep? Answer is yes and no. No, because you have to put in a lot of effort to become enlightened in general. It could happen spontaneously, but generally you have to put in a lot of effort. So in Vedanta, you have to purify the mind, you have to concentrate and focus the mind, and then you have to undergo Vedantic training, which consists of studying, listening to these Vedantic teachings, then thinking about them, and then meditating upon that. Basically attending Ask Swami sessions, lots of them. So that is sadhana. You have to develop devotion, we have to maybe get a mantra and repeat it millions of times and meditate and try to become more selfless, and all on the basis of an ongoing, continuing moral struggle to be truthful, to be self-controlled, to be selfless, to be loving. So a lot of hard work. So it's not spontaneous that way. However, it's not entirely wrong to say it's spontaneous, because at the final level, when one does become enlightened, in whichever way you see, if you're a devotee, you have the vision of your chosen deity. If you are a meditator, you have samadhi, or in the Vedantic sense, you have that breakthrough. You realize, I am Brahman. All of these, they all agree on one point. That last breakthrough was not our effort. Last breakthrough was not our effort. We did whatever we could do at our level, but the last breakthrough, that enlightenment, some would call it grace, some would call it spontaneous. It comes from somewhere else. Probably it's already coming, we are not able to catch it. And we put in the hard work, then we are able to catch it. Swami Vivekananda put it this way. All we can do is polish the mirror. All we can do is polish the mirror. He didn't explain any further. All we can do is polish the mirror. Mirror is the mind. where the enlightenment will occur. And what we can do is we can purify the mind through ethical and selfless life, we can focus the mind through meditation, and we can tune the mind through Vedantic studies to begin to notice what is being said. But like a mirror, when you polish it, it catches the reflection very well. It catches the object very well in a clear reflection. That reflection, it comes from the object. The mirror by itself cannot develop a reflection, no matter how much you polish it. You have to have the object, which will be reflected in the mirror. Similarly, it's a very good analogy for enlightenment. We can polish the mirror, but the actual catching of the reality, it depends on the reality itself. In Advaita Vedanta, the reality is us. We ourselves are that reality. So spontaneous or not. Then the second question was, what is the difference? How does the enlightened person, ordinary person see the world?
What is the difference between a normal person and an enlightened person when experiencing the world?
I'll just change the terminology. Otherwise, it will become a normal person and abnormal person and the enlightened person. We prefer unenlightened person and enlightened person, or a seeker and the one who has found it. The difference is, first of all, it's like this. Swami Vivekananda was walking in the deserts of Rajputana, Rajasthan now, and he used to see in the distance a beautiful oasis. You know where this is going. So one day he became thirsty, and when he went close to it, he saw that it was a mirage. There was no water there. And then he started walking again. But the interesting thing happened next. When he looked back, what did he see? The oasis. Water. Beautiful water. So much water there. But now he knows that it is, there's really no water there. It just looks like that. Similarly, after enlightenment, you see the same world. You see the same world. However, there's a vast difference. If you have eyes, as long as you have eyes, you will see forms, colors, shapes. You have ears, you will hear sound, and so on. But your understanding of what you are seeing has changed so dramatically. Now, if I say understanding, people will think, so you have understood some theory. No. It is so dramatic and so direct and so powerful that it's very honest to say that you are actually seeing in an entirely different way. I remember this one monk who I consider to be enlightened. So I was a novice. I approached him. This is nearly 30 years ago. His name was Swami Mokshadanandaji. He has passed now. I still remember clearly in his room. I was this absolute new novice. We are talking about this question. What happens? What do you see? Where is that reality? You're talking about Brahman everywhere. So where is it? Something like that was the question. But this little bit I remember very clearly. He looked at me. So he was this short, fair man with hair like Einstein, like frizzy hair and bright eyes shining like stars. He was suffering a lot physically. He was I had to take oxygen about 10, 12 hours a day. But always, and never ever, till the end of his life, saw him without his smile and twinkling eyes. Anyway, so this was long before the end of his life. I knew him for about 7-8 years. So this was one of the first meetings, second or third meeting, I think. So I asked him this question, and he looked at me and he said, "This is it." He's pointing to the window of his room, and there was a tree outside and sunlight and the Ganges, the Ganga flowing by. "This is it." I said, "This? A window? The tree? So this is Brahman?" And then he said, rather pensively, he said, "Not quite." And then in Bengali he said, "Acha thak pore hobe, let it be, it'll happen in its own time. It'll happen." What I was seeing as a window, as a tree, as sunlight and water, he was seeing, quote unquote, as Brahman. Was he not seeing the window? He was. After all, it's like this. You look at the altar. So yes. And look at the wood here. You'll say, yeah. Are you seeing two different things? No. You're seeing the same thing. But it is through and through wood only, this altar. Every bit of it. touch wood. So you see. So like that, so the enlightened one sees, Brahman sees again, quote unquote. He'll see exactly what I see, what we all see, but more than that, much deeper. The mirage example, I remember Professor J. Garfield, who's an expert on Indo-Tibetan, on Buddhism, Madhyamaka Buddhism. He has a nice take on this mirage example. It's because something that's used both in Vedanta and in Buddhism. So he says that you see this mirage when you're driving along in a long road in through a desert, like in Arizona, for example. I also have seen this, so I related to that example. And he says there are different takes on this. One is, when you see the mirage, the novice driver who's driving through for the first time, or who doesn't know what he's going to see, what will he think it is? He'll think it's water. Like Vivekananda thought it was water. Then the expert driver who has driven through this many, many times, he has done this many times before. And when he sees that same thing, what will he see? It's a mirage. He knows it as a mirage. And the person who has understood what a mirage is, who has read a book, who has thought it through, like us, in-between person, what will that person see? That person will see water, but will understand, oh, this is what is called a mirage. So there is the ordinary man of the world who sees this and takes this to be the real. There's nothing more to it. This is the reality. There's the enlightened one, Jivan Mukta, who sees this and says this is Brahman appearing as samsara. It's the same reality. It's existence, consciousness, bliss. And there is us, in between, unfortunately. We experience just as any unenlightened person would say, but we have read a lot of Vedanta. So we will look at the world and say, oh, I see, it's a world, but actually this is what is supposed to be Brahman, with names and forms, it is the world. What are we seeing? The world. Our understanding is that it is Brahman. So 3 levels. And then he adds a 4th level. There's some kind of, he said, polarized glasses. If you wear those glasses while driving, you will not see the mirage also. You will not see anything. You will not see the water, you won't see the mirage. And so he says the person in samadhi is awake, is fully alert, but not seeing the world appearance, is absorbed in the reality itself, only in samadhi state, when the mind is tuned to that. That's like wearing polarized glasses. So 4 options. One is the ordinary person who sees the mirage as water. Just water, I'm seeing water, and is fooled by it. Like Vivekananda may rush toward to drink it. And like the rest of us, we see the world as this is real and we rush towards it to drink it. That means this is the world that will satisfy me. Here I will find a lot of money which will make me rich and happy. I'll find the best relationships where people will be endlessly nice to me. I'll be the most popular person on Facebook, and so on and so forth. And always find parking. So all of that, this is the world which will supply me with all these things which I want. This is the fool rushing towards the water. There's no water there. And we keep getting hard knocks from life. The enlightened one was Vivekananda. When he is walking away from the mirage and looks back and sees the same water, he says it's a mirage. He will no longer rush towards to drink it. So the enlightened one sees Brahman and the world appearance as an appearance. And then there's the Samani and Samadhi. And then the Vedantic practitioner, the philosopher, the book, read a lot of books and heard many YouTube talks. He will still see the world and react to it as the world, but keep on thinking, no, Brahman. Yeah. Anybody from the audience, would you like to ask a question? Oh, there was third part. Oh, sorry, there was the third part of the question. So the gentleman here, who is that? You come up here. And then the lady next, both of you can come up one after another. Then we'll go to you. What the third part was, can this person see, all right, past, present and future. This is a general question of, do enlightened persons have special powers? Are they like Superman and Spider-Man or something like that? No, really. This was an ancient question, a big question in India and in other places of the world also, because these enlightened beings are powerful beings. They are extraordinary beings. From a Vedantic perspective, do enlightened persons possess extraordinary powers? The straight answer is no. However, enlightenment doesn't make you, in the world, as far as you are concerned, you still remain the same person. With the difference is that you see the truth. Others are walking around in a daze. That the name Buddha comes from that, the one who has awakened. That means the rest of us, we are sleepwalking. So you have awakened to the truth. But can you do extraordinary things in this world? Your behavior will be extraordinary, no doubt. You will be a saint. You will be a most remarkable person. Most remarkable person. That's no doubt. However, special powers like seeing past, present, and future, or are you able to levitate, or see the thoughts of other people? Enlightenment by itself does not confer you with those powers. However, the situation is complicated because there are ways of acquiring these powers, and I cannot deny that some of these powers exist. I have seen it too many times. And I don't want to call them supernatural powers. I think they are natural powers. We just don't know them as natural powers. We have so many powers. Even this, what's the most remarkable achievement in all of our lives? We have forgotten it completely. Tremendous achievement. Learning to walk on two legs. Remarkable achievement. Learning to read and write and speak in a language. And so many amazing, miraculous things we have learned since we were babies. And there are probably some other powers which we don't know about in general, so we consider them supernatural, and when they are manifested, we think they are extraordinary. But they are available. And so there are ways, especially in yoga and tantra, to acquire these powers. And there are many who are not enlightened who have got these powers, and many who are enlightened who have got these powers. And that's why sometimes, because to become enlightened, as I said, we have to put in a lot of groundwork, a lot of hard work. Part of that hard work is meditation and also intense prayer. So this connection to God through prayer and meditation does awaken some of these latent powers, including, for example, seeing past, present, and future to some extent. All the time knowing past, present, and future, only God knows that, omniscient. But some yogis, definitely they do. We cannot deny it. They do. There's so many examples that you cannot. So generally, you would expect advanced spiritual practitioners to have some of those powers. And also remember, all great masters counseled against using these powers. If the usual worldly temptations can suck us back into worldly life and prevent further progress in spiritual life, then these extraordinary powers can be even greater temptations, and they can utterly ruin a person's spiritual life. There's a story of the Buddhist monk. They used to go out for begging for food. So one day they came back to the Buddha and they were all excited and said, one of our brothers developed an extraordinary power. Show him. And that monk came forward quite proudly and he tossed his begging bowl up in the sky and it floated in the sky. So when it came down, the Buddha said, bring it to me. And he brought it, and the Buddha took the begging bowl and smashed it. And smashed it means that was a way of throwing somebody out of the monastic order and told him to leave the monastic order. So such powers are there, but everybody, especially Thakur, Swamiji and others, they all have cautioned against using these powers or chasing these powers. All right. The young man here and then the lady here. Tell us your name and ask the question.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. My name is Ashutosh, and in Drigdrishya Viveka, it says that the ahankara is naturally related to the Chidabhasa, and the ahankara has no relationship to the Sakshi.
Yes.
So does that imply that the Chidabhasa has a natural relationship to the Sakshi as well? And if so, is the sentience that we experience right now also an object to the Sakshi?
Answer is yes to all three questions. But for the benefit of everybody who's listening, it's another one of those difficult and subtle questions which shows somebody who has studied Drigdrishya Viveka. You have studied Drigdrishya Viveka, right? So in that, there comes a a section, a few verses, which try to pinpoint. I mean, keep in mind the Sankhyan model. You are consciousness and the rest of it is matter, including body and mind. So where does this consciousness come in contact, so to say? This whole question in philosophy of a dualism, always the problem will be there. Like mind-body dualism, how do they interact? Similarly, if you're not talking about mind-body dualism, but you're talking about consciousness-matter dualism, where do they interact? What is the relationship? Precisely. So the model there is, you are pure consciousness. It's called the witness consciousness or the seer or the drik. And then there is the body and the mind. And in the mind, consciousness is reflected. Reflection model is used there. Just like sun is reflected in a pot of water. The pot being the body and the water being the mind. But there's a sun which is reflected in the water. You'll find a tiny sun sparkling in the water, in the pot. And it does some of the functions of the real sun. It sparkles and it illumines also. Similarly, you are limitless consciousness, but you don't know that. All you are aware of is the body and the mind, and also finally you are aware of awareness, because right now we are all aware. So is that pure consciousness? Yes and no. It's like the little sun reflected in the water. It's like the face reflected in the mirror. That reflected face in the mirror is like reflected consciousness. And that's what powers our day-to-day, perceptions, our first-person experiences, all our experiences of life are because of this reflected consciousness. As long as the mirror is there, there will be a reflected face. When the mirror is removed or turned around, there will not be any reflection. Similarly, as long as the mind is functioning, there is a reflection. When the mind falls asleep, for example, in deep sleep, no reflection, so you don't feel any kind of experience as such. It's like a blankness. Now, what is done in Drigdrishya Viveka is, in the mind, just take one function of the mind, which is ego, I, the sense of I. It's a function, it's a thought, it's a function of the mind. You can just locate it right now. I feel, yes, I am. This I is this ego, and consciousness is reflected in it as a reflected consciousness, because their consciousness is reflected in the mind, so consciousness is reflected in the ego. And if you attend to the ego right now, the sense of I, it's not only I, it's a luminous I, it's an aware I not only am, but I'm aware, I'm shining. Just look at it and you'll feel that, yes, it's awareness plus I sense, the ego. Just like the reflection of the face in the mirror is mirror plus reflection. Now the question is asked, what is the connection of this ego, Chidabhasa actually? What's the connection of this Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, to the ego, to the body, and to you, the real consciousness? 3 questions. This reflected consciousness, what is its relationship with the ego, with the body, and with the real consciousness? The answer is given that this reflected consciousness will continue with the body as long as the body is alive. The moment the body dies, and then this reflected consciousness will be again manifest in a new body, like it will be born as a new baby, and there will be no connection with the dead body anymore. It will not continue there anymore. So as long as the body is alive, the reflected consciousness will function in that body. If the body dies, no longer. What is the connection with the ego? Consciousness and ego, reflected consciousness and ego. The answer is that as long as the ego is functioning, there will be a reflected consciousness in it. Sahajam, it is natural. Think about a reflected face and mirror. Whenever you show the mirror, there will be a reflected face. Right? And when you take away the mirror, no reflected face. So the reflection and mirror are naturally related. You can't stop it. The real point is this, the third question. What is the connection between the reflected consciousness and the real consciousness, you? What is the connection? It's just like the connection between reflected face and real face. What is the connection between reflected face and real face? No connection. You pass your hand between the mirror and your face. There's the mirror with a reflected face. And here is your real face. pass a hand in between. Any connection? Nothing. Your real face has nothing to do with the mirror or the reflected face. However, the reflected face entirely depends upon your real face. And of course the mirror. So it's a peculiar product of your real face and the mirror. The real face does not depend upon the mirror, does not depend upon the reflection. If the mirror is taken away, your face is exactly as it was. If the mirror is brought back, your face is exactly as it was. You go to a barber shop with 100 different mirrors and 1,000 reflections, your real face is exactly as it was. So, the Drigdrishya Viveka says, what is the relationship between Sakshi and Chidabhasa? He says, Ajnana. He says, ignorance only. Karmajam, Sahajam, and then Bhranti-janyam, born of error. The feeling that I am there in the mirror. If anybody feels like that, hey, don't touch the mirror, don't polish it, it hurts. Because you're scrubbing my face. You're not there in the mirror, you're here. Even if I scrub the mirror, nothing will happen to your face. And also, you don't feel that I have to reflect myself in the mirror all the time. Otherwise, I'm gone. But we feel like that. If the mind stops, in deep sleep, we feel I'm gone. So, this is the connection. All right, thank you. Then the lady here. Yes, please come here. And tell us your name and ask the question. Yeah. A little closer, yeah.
My name is Vera. My question is very simple to you. How do I cultivate faith? I was brought up without faith, so it doesn't come naturally to me to be faithful or to have faith in me all the time. I have to work on it.
Yes. If we are brought up without faith, without any devotion in a religious sense, how do you cultivate it? Somebody asked Sri Ramakrishna for advice, and he said, you pray to God. And the person said, but I don't believe in God. And Sri Ramakrishna said, so you can do that. You can say that if there is a God, this is my prayer. Now, it might sound silly, but if you start that way, it comes. We are creatures of practice and habit. So it comes. Yes. A lot of people these days are brought up in families which are agnostic or not at all interested in religion. So they're not exposed to any kind of religion at all. Vedanta is not against conventional religion. It's not against God. In fact, it highly recommends that you have some kind of devotion, some kind of connection to theistic religion. In the Hindu context was if you have devotion to Vishnu or Devi or Narayana, Shiva, in some form, some tradition. But God exists for me in this way. And then you pray to that God and you meditate on the form of that deity and establish a human relationship. And the principle of Vedanta, you humanize your relationship with the divine and divinize your relationship with the human. To see God as friend, or the master, I am the servant, or the father or the mother, and I am the child. Or you are the mother or the father and God is the child. Even more. So intimate relationship, a human relationship with God. That's possible when you have a personal God. You can't have that, the infinite existence, consciousness, bliss is my child. No, it doesn't work that way. You can't establish a relationship with something that's so utterly impersonal. Utterly impersonal. You can realize that when you see yourself as impersonal. You look at Advaita Vedanta. What does it do? I'm not the body, not the mind. I'm the witness consciousness. And the same witness consciousness in all beings. Once you come to the witness consciousness level, it's impersonal. There's every vestige of personality is lost there. Where does personality come? With the mind. With the body. So in path of devotion, you don't deconstruct yourself. You remain as this person, then God is a person to you. I found it very interesting that in Tibetan Buddhism, which is, you would expect it to be a very impersonal path. They don't believe in God. But they have 4 stages. So the first stage is taking spiritual life seriously. That this is real and I need to do something about it. This is samsara, I'm in deep trouble, I need to liberate myself from it, attain nirvana or whatever it is. And then start practice. So the first stage would be that making up your mind that I'm going to make this a project of my life, that I'm going to be a spiritual seeker. The second stage is moral cultivation, becoming a better person, cleaning up my life, leading a moral, ethical life, disciplined life. That's the foundation of spiritual practice. But the third step in this highly impersonal path is cultivating devotion to a deity. See, they don't talk about God, but there are any number of deities there, and they will give you a mantra, visualization process. It's very much like our Ishta Devata and Ishta Mantra. A very personalistic relationship with the devotee, with the deity. And only in the 4th stage comes, the Dzogchen or Mahamudra or Ati Yoga, where the pure light of the void, which we talk about Advaita as existence, consciousness, bliss. So there is a stage in even a highly impersonal approach, like in Mahayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, where devotion is cultivated. How to cultivate that? Practically one can do it. Take up a deity. One way would be taking mantra diksha. So it is being initiated by a guru into deity practice. So God is presented to you in this personal way as Krishna, Ramakrishna, or Jesus, or in some form, or Vishnu or Narayana. And then the guru will give you a particular mantra, and the guru will give you a way of meditation and a way of little ritualistic worship. So this, over time, it may feel mechanical at first. I can't relate to it. But you will quickly see, over time, you will actually begin to develop a fondness, a personal link with that deity. It will work. Once that pull is developed, that this is mine, and this is somehow it becomes real to me, then faith comes. As I say, you get attached to your dog. Why not to God? I've heard any number of times that they got a puppy in the house and somebody in the house was not at all interested in the dog, and very soon they are the ones who are the most attached to the dog. So if you can get attached to DOG, why not to GOD? Yeah. So initiation, installing a personal deity, and a regular practice of, even mechanically, like, if you exist, here is the flower I'm offering to you. If you exist, here is the bell I ring and offer the incense to you. And very soon that if you exist will be dropped. You will feel a presence. Yeah, thank you. With form and without form, yes. You go with form and the two without form. I said the person in the back. So the gentleman there, please come up here. And then we'll take a question from the internet and then back to the live audience. Tell us your name and ask the question.
Thank you, Swamiji. My name is Tarun. Last week you guided us on the concept of fullness and how Brahman is fullness. And it's all pervasive, it's limitless. Yet it does not exist in time and space. So I'm finding it quite abstract and a little bit challenging to have that. You talked about the awareness of Brahman and practice that awareness of Brahman. I'm finding it very difficult to wrap my head around, not in time and space, yet all pervasive and limitless.
Let's put it this way. Brahman itself, the Nirguna Brahman, the attributeless, absolute, without any characteristics, without any form, that is beyond time and space. However, what is within time and space, matter, all of this is not other than Brahman. Right? If you take this table, it's made of wood. From the perspective of the wood, it has no connection at all with a table. It was a log of wood earlier. It was a tree earlier. and now it is in the table form. The table form actually does not exist in the wood. Literally, if I ask you, so the table is in the wood, where? Which part of the wood is table? Whatever you point to, whatever you touch is wood. You say, no, the whole thing is a table. The whole thing is wood. Where is the table apart from the wood? I can show you a clock. Here is a clock apart from the wood which is sitting on the table. These are two separate things I can show you. But can you show me the table apart from the wood? You cannot. Because the table is just a name, a form, and a function, temporarily appearing in the wood, imparted to the wood. Yeah. Similarly, all that we call time, space, universe, these are name, form, and function imposed on Brahman. So what it means is, yes, truly speaking, Brahman has no relation with time, space, the entire universe. But this entire universe, time and space are nothing but Brahman. This table, for example, is entirely dependent on the wood, because without the wood, no table is possible. So, Brahman in its real nature seems to be empty of everything, the shunyam. But what seems to exist for us, this fullness, is also nothing other than Brahman. So therefore Brahman is also full. Now, why it seems abstract to us, let's not worry about the fullness or the emptiness. Advaita Vedanta proceeds on experience. So start with what's real. At no point let go of what feels real to you. So the whole point is, this discussion about fullness, emptiness, all of it seems very philosophical. Why it seems philosophical is we have already left our sense of the real behind it, and we have delved into theory and ideas. That's why it seems empty to us philosophically. So Advaita Vedanta always starts with what feels real. What feels real to you? The body? Yes. Start with the body. Does the body feel abstract or real? Real. And then Vedantic inquiry. I will not go into that. You have heard it many times. All the Vedanta inquiry processes, the 5 levels of the human personality, seer and seen, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, all of these inquiries, they are called prakriyas, methodologies. They all proceed firmly with experience. See, in the 5 levels of the human personality, first, body feels real or theoretical or abstract? Real. All right, let's start there, and we'll see why we are not the body. Then our attention is drawn to something a little more subtle than the body, the breath. Prana, the life forces. Again, you are asked to see that is it real? Is the breath real or is it a theory? It better be real. If it's a theory, then you have to call 911. So it's real. And then we see that that's also an object, that's also changing, that's not consciousness, we are aware of it. So we draw our attention away from the breath to something a little more subtle, thoughts. But again, real. Are thoughts real or not? Very, very real. All our happiness, all our misery, it all depends on mind. So mind is real, though it feels very subtle. And then from there to the intellect, from there to the Anandamaya Kosha, like that 5 levels, subtler and subtler and subtler, until hopefully we are able to catch the subtlest of all, which is called in Mundaka Upanishad Sushukshmam. Very subtle. Why very subtle? Because body is gross or physical. Mind is subtle, but beyond the mind is the witness consciousness, which is very subtle. And in the Vedantic inquiry, at no point should you let go of the sense of real. So that when you finally do arrive at Atman, Brahman, Purnam, Shunyam, it will be very real to you. All right, thank you. Let's take a question from the internet audience.
The question is from Joyrup Bhattacharya from London. Swamiji, I am Andamayi Ma's grandnephew. Ma was my grandfather's older sister. As a child, I'd had the opportunity to spend time not only with her, but also with the sadhus in her ashram across India. My question is related to Brahman, the supreme reality that some may call God or Parabrahman are the names given by the mind. It's nameless, contentless, effortless, and spontaneous, beyond existence and non-existence. Words can't define it, and the mind can't comprehend it. would you agree that thinking refracts the supreme reality into names and perceiving divides it into forms? I understand that nothing is so like God/Brahman as stillness. Mental modifications must come to an end. Thinking and perceiving must stop. The total silence of the mind invites reality to reveal itself as it is. So how does the revelation happen when the mind is not at play? I can intuitively guess that when the mind is not in action, the individuality, sense of I, disappears, and then the light shines upon itself, i.e. Brahman is revealed. Am I right, Swamiji?
Answer is yes, you're right. Yes to all the questions. It's well thought out, well explained. So he starts off. By the way, I didn't know that he was that wonderful lineage. His I think grand aunt would be Anandamayi Ma, who was a great mystic, a fully realized being. She lived in Bangladesh and India later on for, I think she passed away in the 80s probably. So, all right, so you belong to this wonderful lineage. Yes, you're right. When you say that this is beyond time and space, with a beyond name and form, it is only thinking that refracts, that gives names to it, and perceiving that creates individuation. And then nothing is as similar to Brahman as stillness, because in stillness that individuality drops away, this thinking stops, perceiving stops, and the reality manifests itself. All good, all good. But the last question had this word. I can't quite understand how the reality manifests when the mind is silent. Does he not? It's not at play. When the mind is not at play. But you just said, because it's the mind at play is that which creates distortions. So the mind not at play, when it stops playing, the reality manifests itself, according to your own words. And then he says that, is it like this? Is it, what was the last part?
I can intuitively guess that when the mind is not in action, the individuality, sense of I, disappears, and then the light shines upon itself, i.e. Brahman is revealed.
Perfect. And this is called the yogic path, the way of silencing the mind. The mind generates distortions, and if you silence the mind actively, if you fall asleep, it won't work. Then also the mind is silenced. And then also the sense of individuality disappears. Then also your samsara disappears. It's a deep sleep. You don't exist as an individual. Where is your samsara? Everything is gone. It's perfect. But only thing is, it's not perfect because everything is there. It'll all come back in some time when you wake up from deep sleep. But this is the yogic path. The yogic path says the problem is the distortion set up by the mind, as he says. And therefore the solution must be calming the mind down. When you calm down, when you settle the movements of the mind, the reality should shine through. Patanjali Yoga Sutra says, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga, definition of yoga. It's not downward dog. It is the cessation of the play of the mind, the activities of the mind. Swami Vivekananda says, like a lake, when the water is very pure and there are no ripples or waves, you can see straight through to the bottom of the lake. That example he gives. Otherwise, when there are ripples and the water is muddy, then you can't see through to the bottom of the lake. Similarly, when the mind is at play, the reality which is within the mind, which is deeper than the mind, sort of the ground of the mind, or the real nature of the mind, will not manifest itself. This is yogic. But now let me complicate it. There's a little thing which he has said that I can't quite understand, that without the play of the mind, how, in the absence of the activity of the mind, how does it manifest itself? Think about Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, 'Ma' Sharada, Ramana Maharshi and others, whoever is fully enlightened. in the middle of their day-to-day activities, when they are not in samadhi, when Sri Ramakrishna is talking or eating a jalebi or teaching, is his mind functioning or not? Yes. And at that point, is he fully enlightened, or is it everything obscured at that point? He's fully enlightened. So what is it that even when the mind is functioning, the mind is at play, the reality is not obscured? How is that possible? If the functioning of the mind is the main obstacle to reality, then the only way you can have continuous access to your own reality is to remain in samadhi. Stop the mind from playing. One sadhu, I'm just translating, in Himalayas, he said in Hindi, "Lo, apne pyare ko samadhi ke jail khane mein band kar diya." See, you have put your beloved, your God, your beloved in the jail, in the jail of samadhi, and thrown away the keys. The only way you can get access to your beloved God is in that jail of samadhi. Not when you are walking, talking, thinking. The Buddha, in deepest meditation, he came across Bodhi, the enlightenment. Now, if in the deepest meditation, when everything is stilled, the reality shines through, as he has said. But then later, he spent the last 40 years of his life walking, talking, begging for food, instructing, building up a huge monastic organization. So was he distanced from the Bodhi? Was he distanced from reality at that time? No. Therefore, here is the conclusion. Activity of the mind is not the primary obstacle to realization, to enlightenment. According to Advaita Vedanta, the primary obstacle to enlightenment, and Buddhism also, the primary obstacle to enlightenment is ignorance, is not knowing the reality. In deep meditation, when the mind is stopped and the reality shines through and you realize what it is, after that even when the mind is functioning, you still see it. It's like that little kid, I've given this example earlier, who doesn't know what a movie is. Just imagine such a little kid exists. And then the father takes him to a city to show him a movie, a cinema, and says that it's a screen on which there are pictures and there is sound and you can see a story. So he enters the cinema hall, the movie has started. This is very important because when we enter the cinema hall of our life, the movie has started. If we started at the beginning, we would know everything. But nobody starts at the beginning. It's all going on nicely and we suddenly appear on the scene. And what happens? At first, the kid is immersed in the movie. That's what happens to us. We don't inquire what's the reality of what's going on. No little baby inquires of, mostly. They're immersed in everything that's going on. They're fascinated by the movie. And we remain like that. And most people remain at that baby stage throughout their lives. But some people begin to question, what's going on here? Who am I? What is all this? What's the point of it? Where is all this going? So then they turn up, and ask Swami or something like that. And so the little kid after some time asked his dad, "Dad, so this is the movie?" "Yes." "Where's the screen?" And dad says, "There." Suppose he's watching Star Wars or something like that, So there. And he says, "Oh, the spaceship is the movie. Spaceship is the screen." No, behind that. "Oh, the planet is the screen." No, behind that. "Oh, behind that is empty space. So the empty space is the screen." No. You just remove all of this, and that's the screen. "Oh, so that means nothing. The screen is nothing." No. All of it together is the screen. "Oh, so you mean screen means planets and stars and spaceships and space battles all together? That's the screen." How will the father point out the reality to the kid? When there are pictures, wherever he points, there's a picture, and the kid is going to take the picture as the screen. However, one way of convincing the kid is like what he said. There used to be half times in movies earlier. So the movie is switched off. You can go and get your popcorn or whatever. And when the movie is switched off, first what happens is deep darkness. You don't see yourself, you don't see the screen, you don't see the movie, nothing. That's like deep sleep. But then the lights come on and you see the screen on which without the movie. That's like what he is saying. When the mind is stilled, the play of the mind is stilled, the reality shines through. Not in sleep, through yogic meditation. That conscious stilling of the mind. The reality shines through. But next, an interesting thing happens. The kid sees the screen. And when the movie starts again and there are space battles and spaceships and so on and so forth, the kid is no longer confused. The kid knows these are the pictures and the screen is right there. What I am seeing is the screen, even with the movie. Similarly, when the mind is at play, after that enlightenment experience, and the world appears, and you are talking, walking, and doing whatever has to be done, all the time, you know that it is Brahman alone. It is that absolute alone which is appearing in all of these ways. There is no doubt about it anymore. You are directly in contact, or you know that you are that. In the case of the movie, you are separate and the screen is separate, and on that a movie appears. But in this case, you are the movie screen and the movie is also nothing but you. I'm using words carefully. You are not the movie, but the movie is nothing but you. You are the screen on which the any movie appears, or no movie can appear, but you can still be there. So this is what happens. There are different models. One is what he has said and what I was discussing, yogic model, stilling the activity of the mind to make the breakthrough. After which, even when the mind is active, it's not a problem. Let me ask you a question. When the kid, after he understands what the screen is, after half time of the movie, he knows what the screen is and the movie comes on. Now for that kid, is the screen a memory to be recalled, or is he experiencing the screen? You know the difference between memory and experience. You're seeing a person, that's experiencing a person. And when the person is gone, if you remember him, that's memory. You're not experiencing. If the person comes to you a second time, you are experiencing. Memory also comes into play. And what is it called? Recognition. It's an experience. I am experiencing, I am seeing this person, and this is that person I saw earlier. So after, post-samadhi, when you come to a recognition, come to an experience of the world again, what happens? You are experiencing Brahman. And also you are recognizing this is the same thing which appeared, which became clear in samadhi. It's now with the world, with people and everything. So this is the yogic approach. There is another approach. So this depends. The primary method here is the initial samadhi, the stilling of the mind to the deepest meditation possible. An instant's worth of that also is enough to make the breakthrough. Now, there is another way. If you say all this to a bhakta, a devotee, who loves Krishna, for example, or God in some form, still the mind, and the mind is creating all these distortions, they'll be very uncomfortable. They will say, why still the mind? The mind has been given by God. Yes, still all worldly thoughts, shun all worldly thoughts, but replace it. I will think about my beloved Krishna. I am in love with God. You're telling me not to think about my beloved. Why should I do that? I will think more and more about my beloved. I will think only of my beloved Krishna. I will think only of Vrindavan and the service to Krishna, and so all of that, full of thoughts of God. And that is spiritual practice. So the bhakti model is different from this yogic model. Yogic model says, stop, don't think. And I'm just recalling this monk, his meditation instructions. They're like any drill instructor in a parade ground. He said, hilo mat, don't move. That's it. Bolo mat, don't speak. Then socho mat, don't think. But for the devotee, I will move around. Why won't I move? I'll sing and dance. I will dance in the name of Krishna. And don't speak. No, why will I not speak? I will take the name of Krishna. I'll do Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Huh? And don't think. No, I will think. I will think thoughts of prayer and love for Krishna. Why not? So that's the different model. That's also correct. But you must not impose this model on that model, or that model on this model. They are two different models. That will also get you to the reality. There's a third model, which is what Advaita Vedanta is. Advaita Vedanta says, if the whole problem is ignorance, then we should be introduced to knowledge. So without even stilling the mind or without even conceiving of, like Vivekananda said, this Brahman, if you see it from the outside, it is God. Then you have to set up a relationship of love. But if you see it from the inside, I am that Brahman. Inquiry, Vedantic inquiry will get you there. So these are different models. I'm just saying this. And Anandamayi Ma, whom he talked about, she was all of it. She was obviously a devotee. Everybody said she was a devotee. She considered herself a child of God. She would say to everybody, I'm your daughter. But she was a mystic, a yogi, because often she was in samadhi. Sort of effortlessly she used to go into samadhi. But she was also a jnani, full jnani. Because the professor Arindam Chakravarti, who has seen her a few times, he told me that she said to him and to others gathered around, I'll tell you in Bengali and then I'll translate. A startling teaching from someone who seems to be a complete devotee, dualistic. In Bengali, she said, it's a pun. She says, Baba duniyai to dunya. Now I have to explain it. It works in Hindi and Bengali. Dunya is the word for world, samsara, dunya. But the first part of that word is du, means two. So only when you have two, you have samsara. That's what she was saying. It's a strongly Advaitic teaching. When you have no two, there is no samsara. You're free. All right, let's take one more question from the gentleman there. He has been raising his hand. So, please come. And then we'll take one more question from the internet audience and wrap it up.
Thank you, Swami. My name is Nilesh. I traveled actually from London for the event. So nice. Question, very simple. What is life? And is there, if it is, should be the purpose of life?
Okay, big question, but the answer can be given directly. In the words of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, the goal of life is God realization. And the purpose of life is God realization. Whatever we are seeking in life can be boiled down to this. Generally, all living beings try to avoid pain, try to overcome suffering, and try to attain fulfillment. It could be at a physical level, it could be at a financial level, relationship level, pleasure level, knowledge level, or the ultimate spiritual level. But everybody is trying to attain fulfillment. The wise way of overcoming pain and attaining fulfillment is called God realization, enlightenment, moksha, nirvana, many such words. Every religion provides you a way for that. All of religion, I'll say specifically higher religion. In every religion, there is a conventional religion and a higher religion. Higher religion is spiritual practice and enlightenment. So that's the purpose. We might say it's not my purpose. I don't think so. But then whatever you are trying to do right now, what you think is the purpose, what you find useful, good in your life, if you see it, the purpose is exactly the same. You're trying to overcome suffering and attain fulfillment. So, yes, that's the purpose of life. And how do you do that? As Swami Vivekananda said, each soul is potentially divine. The way is to manifest this divinity. The goal is to manifest this divinity within with service, with karma yoga, with devotion or love, bhakti yoga, with psychic control, meditation, raja yoga, or with, he uses the word philosophy, with philosophy, that is jnana yoga. By one or more or all of these and be free. And that is the whole purpose of life, and that's the purpose of religion also. And he says books, temples, doctrines, churches, these are all secondary details. Yeah. Thank you. That's a big question. Can we take a couple of questions from the internet audience? And then we'll wrap it up. All right, I'll do this a little bit rapid fire style. We have gone well over time, as usual.
Okay. Do the AI question. Atanu Majumdar asks, scientists are busy creating consciousness through AI. If we can create machines which are self-conscious, how can we explain Atman then? You said that in deep sleep, some consciousness is still aware of the state of deep sleep. Scientifically, it has been observed that our brains are most active when we are in deep sleep. So isn't this awareness part of that? Is there any need to have Atman for explaining this?
Okay, this is what is called materialist reductionism. Scientists are busy creating consciousness through AI. No, they are not. You just have to speak to a scientist. Any scientist, anybody who's working in AI especially. So they are, what is AI doing? Look at the name, artificial intelligence, not artificial consciousness. So these the robots, the AI, all of these programs, they are all imitating, replicating certain human capacities. Intelligence, memory, decision making, even creativity. The new AI machines are doing that. I was just mentioning it. I asked ChatGPT to write me a poem on Swami Vivekananda. It did that. And a very nice poem. And then I said, write me another poem on Swami Vivekananda. It did that also. It took less than 3 or 4 seconds. And if I did that to ChatGPT all day long, it would keep on writing poems by the dozens and hundreds all day long, all different poems and all pretty good. If you ask me to write a poem on Vivekananda, I could. But it would be maybe difficult for me to write one and I would take time over it. And if you ask me to keep writing poems every minute, I couldn't. None of us could. So AI can do those things. It can do just about everything we're capable of doing except one thing, which is consciousness. If you say, are you stipulating this? Are you saying that it is these things are not conscious? I always say that let's not get into this debate at all. It's not worthwhile. Ask the experts. Ask the people who are doing this programming. All of them will say, yes, we are making a claim that AI is intelligent, AI has memory, creativity, decision-making power. None of us are claiming that AI is conscious. By conscious, I mean, you have to understand what is meant by consciousness. Consciousness simply means the feeling of life itself, the capability of experiencing. I give the example of, in San Francisco, you have these, what do you call them, self-driving cars, Google self-driving cars. It's very strange seeing one of them pull up next to you. No passenger, no driver, nothing. And driving merrily along and better than you. Now, but tell me one thing which is not there, you see, when you are driving the car, you have the sense of sound and, sight and continuous feeling of taking decisions, sometimes anxiety, especially in San Francisco, you will have the very steep ups and downs in the... So, the same activities are being performed by the AI in that car, but that AI has no feeling inside. It's not actually seeing. It has the behavior of seeing. But inside there is no feeling of seeing or hearing anything or feeling anxious or taking any decisions. That feeling is not there. That first person experience is not there. And not only it's not there, if you ask these experts, the programmers and the computer scientists, consciousness studies experts, they have no idea at all how to begin. How to make a system intelligent, they have very good ideas and they are beginning to succeed. How to make it creative, they know how to do that and they're beginning to succeed. How to make it conscious, how to make it feel, no idea. No idea. It's not that it's difficult and we can't do it yet. They have no idea at all. Where to begin? How are we ourselves feeling? And that also nobody knows. So, scientists are not engaged in making AI conscious. They have no idea how to do that. But they are interested. And then the second question was that if these machines become conscious. Second part of it.
You said that you said that in deep sleep, some consciousness is still aware of the state of deep sleep. Scientifically, it has been observed that our brains are most active when we're in deep sleep. Yeah. So isn't this awareness part of it?
Yes, so you said that there's some consciousness even in deep sleep, and now they're seeing that some parts of the brain, especially parts of the brain associated with consciousness, now they are reporting, brain scientists, that those parts are active even in deep sleep, when the subject is in deep sleep. So what he's saying that you are saying that and that's true and this is brain activity has been noticed. So that's what's generating this consciousness. But that's already assuming that brain activity generates consciousness. And you might say here, but isn't that true? That is the hard problem of consciousness. I'm not going to go into that. Just Google it. What is the connection between brain activity and consciousness? Nobody knows till now. There are two theories on this. One is that in principle, you cannot explain consciousness through brain activity, which is something that I subscribe to. A material process can give material results. How can a material process generate subjective experiences? Nowhere it does that. So how, this is also a material process in the brain. How will it generate subjective experiences? Nobody, there is no way of doing that. No way of explaining it also that way. However, there is a whole theory of subtle body and consciousness reflected in the subtle body. That reflected consciousness feels aware. Now, couldn't you generate a subtle body artificially? Because subtle bodies are supposed to be bodies, material, in a Sankhyan sense. So couldn't you generate a subtle body? I guess if you could do that, then it would catch a reflected consciousness. It's like making a mirror. If you are able to make a mirror, you will get a reflected face. Similarly, if you are able to make a proper subtle body someday, you will get a reflected consciousness there, which will function like a real consciousness. Yeah. One more question.
This is from G. Kamesh. Truth must be the same for everyone, especially for enlightened ones like Buddha, Shankara, Ramanuja, and Madhva. However, they seem to have their own version of it. If Advaita is the truth, shouldn't all enlightened persons profess it?
Good question. It's so good that we are ending on this question. So, the truth must be one. There must be one reality. We are all part of this one reality. So, if enlightened persons have accessed this truth, they have become enlightened about this truth, shouldn't they give one account of it? And look at the differences. Good, well chosen. Madhvacharya, who lived about 800 years ago, the great commentator in the dualistic Madhva Vedanta, the Advaita Vedanta tradition. What did he find? He's enlightened. What did he find? There is God. God exists. For him, God is Vishnu or Narayana. And that God is supremely independent, Swatantra. And all of us are dependent, all living and non-living things are dependent on that God, Paratantra. And there is a clear difference between God and us. We are not one. We are different. That's why dualism. That's why Madhva's always iconography will show him like this. Not victory. It means two. There are two realities, dualism. Then along comes Ramanuja, who is supposed to be enlightened also. And this great master, the commentator on the Vishishtadvaita tradition, Sri Vaishnava tradition, he says, no, not separate, not two. We are all part of one unity. So God is the cosmic sum total of all living and non-living things. So this entire universe is like the body of God. We are all one. Yes, there are differences. Just like in your own body, the legs are different from the tummy and the tummy is different from the hands and hands from the head. But they are all part of an organic unity which you call the body. And you feel like one. Similarly, there is one organic unity in this universe which is God or Brahman, and we are all parts of that. We are parts of a divine whole. Like a bonfire, Upanishad says, a bonfire is burning, thousands of sparks emanate from it. Each spark is coming from the same bonfire, but the spark by itself is not the bonfire. Then comes Shankara and says, yes, that ultimate reality is there. And you and that ultimate reality are one and the same. No two, no part and whole. You are that ultimate reality. There is no whole and part relationship. You are Brahman. And then Buddha, who was before all of them, he said, none of this is true. There is no God, there is no permanent self, and he's also enlightened. How? I think for that we have to go to Sri Ramakrishna. In the Indian tradition, it is accepted. From thousands of years, the truth is one, and the sages speak of it variously. It's written there. From the Rig Veda, the oldest text in Hinduism, Rig Veda, Ekam Sad Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. Truth is one, the sages speak of it variously. In the Shiva Mahimna Stotra, it is said, the three Sankhyas, Yoga, the Pashupati Mata, the Vaishnavas, all of these are different paths. They all lead to you, my Lord, as different rivers wend their way to the same ocean. Then in different places you will find. In Jagannath Puri, which I'm familiar with, I grew up near that, so where God is worshipped as Jagannath. Jagannath literally means the Lord of the world, but it became the English word Juggernaut. You see in the dictionary, because of the car festival. So Jagannath comes out once in a year on a chariot, huge, giant wooden chariots, which are as big as these brownstone buildings. And the images are installed there and they go for a little spin around the town once a year. And millions of people come there. So when the first British colonizers came and they saw this and they asked, what's that? And the people there must have said Jagannath. And they were more interested in the giant chariot, and they thought, so that's Juggernaut. So that's what became the word Juggernaut in the English dictionary. Now, in this very, very Hindu deity, Jagannath is nothing but Krishna. So in this very, very Hindu deity, and all the rituals are very Hindu pujas, rituals, absolutely orthodox Hinduism. One of the hymns to Jagannath, which is chanted daily, is that which the Shaivas worship as Shiva, the Devis as the Divine Mother, the Buddhists as emptiness, the Vaishnavas as Vishnu, is what we worship here as Sri Krishna Jagannath. So imagine, atheist Buddhists also find a place there. So this sentiment was always there in Hinduism. And Sri Ramakrishna very specifically emphasizes this day and age. Jato mat tato path. As many faiths, so many paths. But how is that possible? His question is, how is this possible? How, if truth is one, how can you have such multiple, not only multiple, conflicting accounts? How? The reason is this. Think about it. If truth is one, but suppose it is beyond language. You can't express it through language. Upanishad says, avang manasagocharam, beyond thoughts and concepts, beyond language. No particular theology or philosophy can adequately describe it. Because language fails to do that, and concepts fail to express it. Then what can you do? You can do one of two things. One is you can be very precise and logical and say, all of these are wrong. I can show you each of these philosophies fails to capture the truth. That's what Nagarjuna did nearly 2000 years ago. Moola Madhyamaka Karika is the foundation of the school of emptiness, basically, in Buddhism. And the other way around is all of them are true. But they are not true by themselves. They all express different paths and different aspects of an infinite reality. Can you think of the ultimate reality as so capacious that you can approach it as Jagannath, as Krishna, as Christ, as Shiva, as the formless Allah, as the emptiness of the Buddhist, the clear light of the void, pure consciousness of the Buddhist? Can you think of the ultimate reality in all of these ways? It's like the old Indian tale of the 5 blind men who went to touch an elephant, and each described the elephant, someone as a pillar who touched the leg of the elephant, someone who touched the trunk said it's like a pipe, someone who touched the big ear of the elephant said it's like a big fan, someone who touched the tail of the elephant said it's like a rope. Now they were not wrong. They were not wrong, but they were partially correct. That's another way of looking at it. That this is a limitless reality. One of the things Sri Ramakrishna hated was people trying to limit the nature of God, saying that God is like this, as my book says, as my teacher says, and that's it. Everything else is wrong, and you should all come to my path. No. Sri Ramakrishna said, never limit God. Who are you to limit God? So the ultimate nature of reality is so capacious. All of these, they work. They take you to that reality, all of these approaches. So Madhva's dualistic approach takes you to realization. So does Ramanuja's approach. So does Shankara's approach. So does Buddha's approach. And all the other approaches. And one of Shankaracharya's disciples, Sureshwaracharya, a great disciple of Shankaracharya, has a beautiful verse in which he says, by whatever path seekers attain enlightenment, all those paths of the past and the present and all those which are to come are welcome. So, yes, the answer to that is, the ultimate nature is so capacious that all of these descriptions, if you ask Nagarjuna, they're all wrong. If you ask Sri Ramakrishna, they're all right. And they're both saying the same thing. They're both expressing the same thing. But the fact is they all work. And they will take you. They're like paths. They're not. These descriptions are not the end. They will take you to that realization and set you free from suffering and give you limitless fulfillment. I pray to Sri Ramakrishna, Ma Sharada, Swami Vivekananda. May they bless us that we may find this fulfillment in this very life itself. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.